All right, welcome. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody has heard the list of supplies. And as always, if you don't have the exact supply, don't worry, I will still make it accessible. But for today, we're working with so-called difficult emotions. And I'll talk a little bit about why I don't like to think of them as difficult emotions. But we will get to meet fear and anger and play with them a little bit in a fun way so that we can begin to know what those emotions feel like in our bodies, how they impact our emotions and our mind, and what those emotions are here to tell us. So that when they pop up in a breathwork session, we have the support we need to work with them and surrender and let them move through instead of being stuck or stopped in our practice. So the tools that we're looking for today, I did not list water, but I always recommend a glass of water. And if it's cold, then it helps re-ground you if you get a little overwhelmed or lost or have any problems. A sip of water will immediately bring you back to present. And it's really a helpful tool. Also, wiggling your toes, that's, I always say, a superpower because it is. That'll just immediately reground you at any time. If you can have a tissue, we will be breathing out through our nose. So I'm someone who has allergies, and a tissue is necessary for that. So if you want one, you might grab one. And pen and paper is the usual supply, but today I'd like you to have 2 extra pieces of paper because we're going to scribble on them. And then any mark making tools. Crayons would be amazing. They're soft. You can really scribble. Big fat markers that are really inexpensive, also a great tool. But if all you have is one single pen, you can still do the exercise. But having a couple colors is really fantastic. I've actually got some crayons just in a jar, and I only have a few colors, so I'm going to use what I have when we get to that portion. So no need to have a full set of anything. If you have 3 different colors, great. If you have 9 colors, fantastic. If you have one, you'll still be able to participate. And then lastly is something to drum on. So I have a real drum and a fancy mallet. I'm not going to be drumming on my drum. Maybe you have a little kid's toy that's a drum, also usable. I have this amazing seed pod from a tree that I'm going to use as a rattle, and that's a wonderful tool. Egg rattles work. Maybe you have an empty water bottle and you can throw some coins or buttons in it real quick, and that can be a rattle for you. I'm going to drum on a book. Let me balance everything here real quick. I just have a big fat sketchbook, and I'm just going to drum on it because I like the way it sounds and how it feels to drum on it. So I will put that on my lap and drum on that when we get to that portion of things. So there are many options for drums or rattles that you can use. You can be fancy. You can be not fancy if you have a pot or a pan or a piece of Tupperware or a box that you can drum on. That's great. We also can clap hands and drum on our legs, drum on our chairs. So many options. So if you don't have any of those supplies, that's okay. You can drum on your chair, you can drum on your knees, whatever works right for you. So that's it for supplies. 3 pieces of paper, mark making tools. If you have some colors, that's great. The less fancy, the better, because we'll be scribbling. And then something to drum on, which could just be your lap, or something that makes a shaker sound. Seed pods, shakers, a bottle with a bunch of rice and beans in it, whatever you have is absolutely appropriate and will be fine. All right, so let's come present together. You are all coming from different parts of the world, and many of you are in different parts of your day than me. For me, it's morning. It might be afternoon or evening for you. So I always love to honor that, that we're coming from all different moments, bringing with us different emotions, different feelings. So let's take a deep breath together and sigh it out. And then wiggle in your chair so that you feel where it supports your body. Or maybe just wiggle your toes and feel your feet on the floor. Perhaps you're lying down and you're going to feel the ground beneath you or your bed beneath you. Take a moment to feel how well supported you are. I'm balancing my arms on the armrest and really relaxing to allow that to support me so I can have that moment honoring it and acknowledging that I am supported by the ground beneath me. And as you do that, take a second to just check in with yourself and come up with one word to express how you are arriving in this moment. And I'll have you type your word in chat. Please also include where you're coming from. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, which is the west coast of the United States, in Seattle, Washington, at the top of the United States on the West Coast. My word is grr. Grr. Not really a word, but a sound, but that works too. And as you type these in chat, I'll read a few of them out. We have calm in Virginia, churning in the Midwest of the United States of America, relaxed and happy from Turkey, hopeful in the UK, fine from Cornwall, UK, grateful in Vienna, Austria, tired in Vancouver, open in Colorado in the United States. Beautiful. I love these check-ins. I love how some of us are similar and some of us are different. Healing in Ontario, Canada. Apprehensive in Vancouver, BC, Canada. In the Pacific Northwest, and also grateful. Empty in Portugal. You all have such beautiful words. Thank you so much for taking this moment to check in and be present. And I want to invite you, if you're watching the playback and you haven't attended live, to say out loud your word and where you're from and honor that you are joining all of us just at a later time. Okay, let's get started. Difficult emotions. First of all, you're all very brave to attend with a title like Difficult Emotions. I do want to name that at any point we'll do 2 exercises with each emotion. At any point, if you want to stop participating, just stop, wiggle your toes, take a sip of your water, or just take a deep breath and sigh it out, and then just be present, holding space until we come together for the breath exercise that will help reground everybody and bring us all back to neutral. So we're just going to play a little bit with fear and anger and then come back to neutral in a way that will not be too deepening. But if at any point you feel like it's too much for you, you can honor your inner guiding intelligence and stop participating and hold space or witness instead. All right. So difficult emotions. I don't like the term difficult because I feel like all emotions are really important. Does anybody want to talk about the idea of difficult emotions? Specifically, we're meeting and playing with fear and anger today. But maybe those aren't the difficult emotions for you. Maybe joy is difficult. Maybe calm is difficult. Maybe excitement is difficult. There are many different emotions, and maybe something else is difficult for you, and anger's easy. Maybe your family regularly expressed anger, or your culture does it really well. And so that's not a problem at all. You're familiar with it. Maybe there's another emotion you're not familiar with. All the emotions are challenging. I love that statement. Yes, all the emotions can really be challenging from time to time. And the more we get used to them, the easier it is to work with them in our breathwork sessions, to move into them and deepen them for a moment so that we can learn what message they have for us. So then we can move through it and access the personal growth or transformation or support that we need. Motivated, oh, I missed one check-in. Motivated in Escomins, Quebec, Canada. Beautiful. I'm sure I mispronounced that. Does anybody else want to say something about emotions before we begin? I have done one of these creative labs on emotions before, and we talked really in depth about emotions in our family, in us as individuals, in our workplace, in our cultures, our region, our country. Every place, every family, every individual has a different relationship with different emotions. We have a post that says, sometimes I get scared to feel some emotions to protect myself. For example, excitement and sadness. Yeah, I love this share. That's very true, that we all have different relationships with emotions, and they can be tough. They can really be tough. So I'm super excited to play with, especially foreboding, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, as it relates to fear, because what Ola is talking about is a little bit of foreboding. It's important to separate acting out of emotion and simply experiencing emotions. Absolutely. And as we get to know different emotions and play with them, we're only looking at two today, but you can do these same exercises with other emotions. As we get to know the emotions, then we begin to learn what they're telling us, what message they bring us, how to work with them instead of just reacting and acting out, as Connie stated. So, absolutely. All right, let's look at fear. Fear actually brings a message. We have fear for a very important reason in our lives because it can help keep us safe. Fear can keep us safe. It alerts us to danger. It's a warning signal. It can, as I always told my nephew when he was little and we were doing things together, from time to time, if he wasn't showing enough fear or concern or awareness, I would talk to him and say, enhance your caution. So expanding, being cautious, becoming more alert, being aware of the area around you. Maybe we were crossing the street and he wasn't paying attention, or doing some other activity with delicate parts. Just all kinds of different reasons that I would alert him to be careful, to take care. And fear helps us do that too. It activates our body and alerts us, and it begins telling us that we need to be cautious, that we need to be aware of safety. It can also prepare us to deal with a threat. And we don't have, well, depending on who you are and where you live, we all have different levels of threats that are physical around us. But we don't have a lot of that. And often fear can become a little out of control because we're not used to working with it. So getting to meet fear and play with it is a great way to be used to it so that when it pops up, you can work with it. So we can feel a mild amount of fear, a medium amount of fear, or an intense amount of fear. There are different variations and gradients to how much fear we feel. And so, what I would like to do is play a little bit with fear and drum. So, I'm going to get my drum, which is a book. Anything to drum on, it might just be your lap. And I'm going to put mine on my lap and scoot this back so that I don't shake the screen. We have a post here that says, to fear being physically hurt is healthy Absolutely. But we have fear of being seen or of being out of our comfort zone, which is just a sabotage. So this is true. Sometimes our fears keep us healthy. The innate fear that many, many people have of heights can help us be cautious and aware. But if that fear gets too out of control, it can stop us from doing things we love, like visiting a tall building or going up a ladder if we need to. So there is an important reason for fear, but if we are not in touch with fear and how it acts for us, we can lose control and it can become sabotage. Absolutely. So what I'd like us to do is make some noise. If you're somewhere where that you can't make noise, you can, like playing air guitar, you can air drum. But if you can make noise, that's wonderful. I'd like to work with foreboding, and let me talk about foreboding. It's the beginning of just starting to feel a little bit of fear. Fearful apprehension, a feeling that something bad will happen. It's like a storm is on the horizon, or you're starting to see something materialize in the dark that you're afraid of. Just something far away that you know is coming, and you feel the beginnings of fear. So, some other words for that are apprehension, anxiety, trepidation, disquietude, unease, misgiving, suspicion, worry, fearfulness, dread, alarm, butterflies in the stomach. Some phrases that we say here in the United States are calling it having the willies, ooh, or the heebie-jeebies, or the jitters, twitchiness. There's a couple more here I want to talk about. Intuition, that inner intelligence that knows something's happening. Presentiment, inkling or a hunch, warning, portent, prediction, and gut feeling, or feeling it in your bones. That sixth sense that something to be afraid of is on the horizon. So we want to channel that feeling of foreboding. Thank you for typing it into chat. I appreciate that. I got so wrapped up in my description. So I appreciate your help. So foreboding, we're going to spend just a couple minutes drumming, and I'll lead us through a little bit so that it's easier. I know sometimes it can be hard to play and get curious and really dive into things that are unique that you haven't done before. But drumming, pounding, shaking, all those things, we'll do those together here. So we'll enhance our fear, and then we'll move through that feeling of foreboding, and then we'll stop and do a breath exercise to bring us back to neutral. So something's on the horizon. You can see it coming. Begin drumming a little bit. It's just barely the beginnings of that foreboding feeling, that feeling of worry. You're not quite fearful yet. And then it comes closer, and you begin to feel it like a storm coming in and rolling in. And you see those clouds. Drum the way you want to drum. Feel that feeling in your body. Expand it a little bit. Expand it. And then maybe it's bigger. It's bigger and louder. You really feel more afraid because it's right coming near. And then drum like you're scared. Maybe you shake your head like I am. Maybe you move or you shout or you whimper or you hiss. Really expand the feeling. However you drum it, however you do it, expand that feeling and stop. Notice how your body feels. I've got tension in my throat and a little bit of a, icky feeling in the back of my throat. I'm tense in my cheekbones and jaw, actually quite a bit. My breath is really shallow. I'm noticing that. Yeah. Noticing that really shallow breath. Now, before we reground, I'd like us to grab our paper and whatever mark making material you have. I have some blank paper today. It's just kids' paper, whatever you've got. Take the colors that you want for fear, if you have colors, and scribble it. So take a moment and just scribble. Maybe you're making jagged marks. Maybe you're doing X's. Maybe you're doing triangles or swirly shapes. Maybe it's a dark color. Maybe with your one pen, you're doing dots and hatch marks. Really just scribble into that page that feeling of foreboding, that feeling of fear. What's it like? How do you show movement? And just scribble it in. We're going to spend a couple more minutes on this. We don't want to spend a long time. This is really accessing your inner guiding intelligence and allowing it to move and show up on the page. So we want first thought, best thought. We don't want to overthink it. Just scribbling. And everyone's scribbles will look different. Couple more minutes just to fill in anything that you want to scribble. I'm going to give us all a couple more minutes, and I'm going to do one with just a pen on lined paper as well, so I can show you more than one example. And I almost like my one with just the lines better. Okay, so finishing up, if you have colors, you might look something like this. If you have crayons or fat markers, of course, yours will look entirely different. Everyone's will be different. It's just a visual expression of that foreboding feeling on the page. And then I did this one as well with just one pen. The paper doesn't matter. But for me, this seems to express it more than the other one. What I'd like you to do next is find the part that is the most expressive of fear. So is it this part? Is it this part with the clouds? What part of your drawing is the most expressive of that foreboding feeling? And then we're actually going to take it and tear a square out. That is the most poignant moment of foreboding. And this is my image of fear, foreboding, things coming at me, coming in. So this is a card, an image, a picture or a portrait of that early stages of fear. So I can look at this throughout the week and begin thinking about, how is it a portrait of fear? Is the gray color, fogginess and confusion in my brain? The lines coming towards me might express one thing. The dot might be my heart beating rapidly. Spend the next week just kind of touching base and saying, hey, fear, hey, early fear, and just look at it. Just look at it and acknowledge it and get to know it and release it. Okay. So now that you've got your fear, and if you feel like the whole image is what you need, then keep the whole image, whatever is right for you. So next, I want to do some breathing exercises to bring us back to neutral. Who's still feeling a little bit of a racing heart or a little bit of something else and needs to come all the way back to neutral? A couple of us might still need some water. Yes, absolutely. Take a sip, and if you can, do uh this is something kids usually do, and we don't do it as adults, but it's really a great thing to do. Take a sip and make that weird sound and breathe out afterwards. That's a great thing to do with water to reground. So let's do some breath. I'm going to walk us through what I'm going to call ghost breath and then whale breath. And ghost breath is like the whistling wind blowing by. So we're going to breathe in through our nose and make an O with our mouth, a really tight O, so that when we exhale forcefully, it'll sound like the wind whistling. So let me demonstrate once. So you get a little whistle. So let's take 5 breaths together in a row, almost like circular breathing. So we'll just do 5 in a row, and I will pop in and count them, but I'm going to be doing them as well. So taking the breath in through the nose and whistling out through the mouth. Two more. Allowing your breath to return to normal. Noticing what's shifted in your body. A lot of my racing pulse has relaxed. My hands feel a little tingly. I feel a little bit pleased. You may feel completely different. Go ahead and put your hand on your heart for a second. Take one breath in and just breathe it out normally. And let's do a whale breath. We're going to do 5 of these as well. And we'll pause between each whale breath. And the whale breath is something a sound healer named Angela Wilson taught me. And she uses her gongs to sound just like whales in her sound baths. So this breath is just like when a whale surfaces in the ocean. It has the spout on top of its head. And when it surfaces, the spout opens and the air and water just shoots out. So it'll be like really pressing that air out on the exhale. So breathing in through the nose, pause a little bit, build the pressure, puff out your cheeks, and then blow it out like you're a whale. So we'll do 5 of those, and I'll count them. So the first one, and the second, really feeling that release, like the whale exhaling finally. 2 more. And last one. And you may feel a little differently. I feel like I just released a lot. The tension in my jaw is a little bit more gone. My shoulders have settled down. They were up towards my ears during the foreboding, but they've settled down. Take a moment and notice what has shifted for you. Just notice what has shifted. You might write it down on your page that you're journaling on. You might type it in chat and I'll read it out loud. Notice how those two different breath techniques shifted things for you. It may not have shifted anything, or there may have been a big shift. You might like one and dislike the other, or like both or hate both. All responses are correct because we're playing and learning about ourselves. So we have one post, release through the back of the neck. Oh, that's beautiful. Lovely. And as you're taking the time to note that for yourself, return to your image of fear and foreboding. And on the back, maybe write down what fear is for you. Fear enhances my caution. That's what I'm going to write. And I'm writing down portrait of fear. So this is my portrait of fear and what I would like fear, what it usually does, and what I would like to focus on that it does. So it'll help me be less afraid and really take the message it has is that it enhances my carefulness and my caution. Maybe for you, it alerts you to danger or is a warning signal. It could be that it prepares you to deal with a threat, or it announces that a threat is there, or that it keeps you safe, any of the above. Fear brings shame and guilt. It brings awareness. Both of those are beautiful. And that is the point. We're not looking for good, happy things. We're looking for what this emotion does for us so that we can get to know it and know what it tells us and learn how to work with it. A lack of safety, not allowing me to be who I want to be in the world. Fear brings internal limits. I love that you are all knowing this about yourself. Oh, someone wrote about the breath, that ghost breath calms, breath whale releases the stomach. I think that's what it says. Fear paralyzes me, makes me hide and run. Fear makes me feel trapped and that I cannot see. So how beautiful that you just took this dance with fear. You've begun to get to know it. So in your next breathwork session, if that feelings comes up, you are prepared to move through it instead of resisting it. So that is my hope, and that is why we work with emotions. The more we get to know them, the less afraid of them we are. Fear of repercussions if I do what I need to do. See, you're understanding more about how fear shows up in your life. That's so beautiful. Courage is knowing the fear and deciding something is more important than fear. Lovely. I love all of your feedback. Thank you so much. So let's wiggle our toes and take a sip of our water so we can transition over to the last emotion we're going to dance with today. Feel free to be silly and make the sound while you drink or not. With some nice cold water. If you don't have it, just wiggle your toes, maybe wiggle your fingers, stretch a little bit, shake it off, and move around. So anger is not something that was expressed in my family. We just didn't express anger because it was rude to be angry about something. You just needed to keep that to yourself. And so I had a lot of trouble knowing anger and learning it. And some of the things that anger can communicate, I always say that anger and sadness are in the corner kissing. And I can never tell, is it anger that's happening for real? Or is the anger masking the sadness? Or is the sadness masking the anger? For me, it can go either way. Anger is something that can often mask another feeling. In other words, the anger comes out first and is there and vibrant and loud and mad, and the real feeling sits behind it. And if you don't get to know anger and know that it's masking or hiding another emotion, you never get to the real emotion to release it. And it can stay stuck. Sad looks mad. Yeah, for many of us, that's true. So anger can sometimes hide shame. If you're feeling ashamed, anger can come right out really fast. Sometimes, and especially in my culture here in the United States, sometimes for men, they're not allowed to socially express emotions. And so when they feel an emotion, it can trigger shame. And when the shame happens, anger can come out. And I know there are a lot of people working to shift that culture here, but that can sometimes happen. And for women and everyone in between, that can happen to anyone. That if we're ashamed of having emotions, or our culture likes to suppress emotions and be more stoic, anger can be the first thing that always comes out, no matter what emotion is present, because we're ashamed that we have the emotion and that we're feeling something so strongly. Um, Anger can also hide fear. So that's why we met fear first and played with some early beginnings of fear and foreboding. Because very often for some of us, anger will mask the fear. We'll feel vulnerable. So the anger comes out to misdirect or protect us. Some of us express anger with a smile. Some of us with a frown, some of us with a very neutral face or an enraged face. There are many ways to express anger. Anger can point to needs being neglected. It can point to the fact that there's an old hurt that has come up from your past or from childhood that hasn't been addressed. And so you're just angry all the time because you don't realize that the anger is saying, hey, hey, there's something under the rug over there. Depression is anger turned inward. Yeah. Anger can mask grief, loss, and depression as well. Powerlessness, it might indicate we feel like we have no power. So we lash out in anger. It might hide embarrassment, loneliness, fear, loss, depression. It might point out that your boundaries are being crossed. Someone's doing something they shouldn't be doing, and you don't realize it, so your anger comes out to tell you. All of these things point to a moment of being uncomfortable. So anger very often is at play when there is some discomfort happening. So when we notice anger, it can tell us, hey, hey, look here. So I don't like to think of anger as a bad emotion, or that's why I chose difficult. It can be very difficult. In fact, one quick story, when I was in my early 20s, I had a friend that was a very close friend that I lost touch with for a couple years, and she called me out of the blue and was in crisis. So I drove a couple states over to pick her up, and I picked her up, but on the way back home, I didn't get sleep. The drive was really tough. Everything was just confusing. I didn't know what was happening. When we got to my house, she wouldn't leave me alone for even a second. I was trying to get her settled and get us all to sleep because I had to work in the morning. And it just was so, I just kept getting angrier and angrier, but I didn't know it because I wasn't familiar with anger and I really didn't know how to express it. So it came out with me shouting. And I never do anything like that. That was such a departure from who I was as a person at that time in my life. And I began screaming at her, just leave me alone. Just give me 5 minutes. Just screaming. And I didn't realize that that was a sign saying something's wrong. Your boundaries are being crossed, you're being manipulated, something is happening that shouldn't be, something's wrong. And I went to work the next day and I started thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I got about her being there. And when I got home to talk to her about it, she had robbed me. She had stolen a bunch of my stuff and my roommate's stuff and left. And so I didn't know what anger was trying to tell me, that she was not herself. She was not the friend I remembered. She was trying to manipulate me to keep me without sleep and on edge so that she could do what she needed to do and take off with a bunch of money and stuff. So anger is a great indicator if we can learn about it and learn how to express it and let it flow through us and hold it. Yeah, that was awful. And I did recover a bunch of my things, which was wonderful. I didn't get the money back, but it's okay. And I do very much wish her well and hope her life gets better. But it was sad to have that happen. But it taught me so much about anger as I reflected on it and began to learn and realize that my anger was always suppressed. And it took me a long time to learn how to handle anger and not feel like I was going to burn up or explode with rage. And that again is one of the reasons why we're looking at these emotions so that we can get to know them. Because when we get to know them, anger especially points out that something is making us uncomfortable, that something is happening that we need to pay attention to. So, um, anger can help define our wants and needs. It can identify unresolved emotional pain of the past, be a catalyst for change. And really, that is where anger is most important, because when we're stuck and we want to change, but we just can't, sometimes the anger pushes us through. It breaks that inertia so that we can begin moving down the path of healing and we are no longer stuck. So let's dance with anger through sound and movement. Oh, thank you. And if you do have to leave early, again, it's recorded, so we'll be posting that. And if you ever need help finding the links, you can email the admin team, admin@breathworkonline.com. And Lisa, now's a perfect time to jump out so that you don't get pulled into dancing with anger, and you can do it later. Have a wonderful day at work. All right, for the rest of us who are still here and ready to dance with anger, we'll do the drawing, the scribble afterwards. So have your scribble tools next to you if you need them. And we're just going to go into anger a little bit. So just thinking about anger. You know, the rattle's not right for me. Maybe you're drumming on your lap or your chair. Oh, that's wonderful. Drum at a cadence that feels right for you. Yours may be completely different than mine. I'm using my hands to pound on my seat. You might stomp, growl. You might make claws. You might hiss. You might shout. Ah! I don't normally make sound as much. The vocal journey with Alex, I definitely am going to watch that again and do it again because vocalizing is beautiful. So, really thinking about anger and just drumming what feels good for anger. This feels really great to me, the resistance. So, I'm just going to let us drum anger for a minute here. Ah. Just another 30 seconds. Really intense anger. Whatever is right for you, the drumming. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and stop. Notice your body. I gotta tell you, I'm a little bit angry. I really feel the emotion of anger in my body. And coming up after that is sadness. So just noticing whatever it is, you don't have to judge it. You don't have to work with it right now. Go ahead and grab your paper and your mark making tools and scribble out some anger. Just scribbling out anger, however that looks to you. Making marks like dots, crisscrossing, straight lines, swirly lines. All of it is right. Whatever feels like anger and expresses that anger like it's a portrait. If you're still working, we're going to give it another minute. If you're done, like me, go ahead and take a sip of water. We're just going to give it another minute. If you're ready and done, go ahead and tear out the bit that feels the most like anger to you. So it can be your portrait of anger. Draw out your little square. And again, I've got two. I've got one I did with color and one I did with just one pen, so that if you only have one pen, you can see, you can still make a great portrait. If you're still scribbling, that's okay. And then write a portrait of anger on the back, and then write down on the back what anger does to you. And for me, most often, anger tells me my rights are being violated or my boundaries are being crossed. That is most often when I get angry. Sometimes I can get angry because I feel that something is wrong is happening. Something that is morally wrong is happening around me. So for you, perhaps it's telling you you're uncomfortable. It might be defining your wants or needs, identifying that you have some unresolved emotional pain from the past. It might be a catalyst for change for you, forcing you to act and move. It might be hiding a specific emotion or shame or embarrassment. It might show you that your needs are being neglected. Many options, whichever is The thing that anger most points out in your life. Go ahead and write it down or type it in chat. Anger often makes me cry. That's a wonderful observation. Anger and sadness. Yeah. Confusion. That's beautiful to know that anger indicates that there's confusion about something. Anger makes me feel victimized. I hear that. Go ahead and post anything else if you want about anger. So I'm still a little angry myself after expressing that. Clearly, an activity I can do again that might be really beneficial for me. Anger hurts. Yeah, I hear you as well. Anger is an opportunity to strike. Anger equals action. But anger uses energy, so I'm mindful how I strike. Beautiful. We're all understanding something new about how anger acts in our lives. It indicates unfairness or my needs are not being met. And you see how anger is something different to all of us, but it is very powerful indicator. It has a message for us. And now in your breathwork sessions, when anger arises, you've begun to get to know anger and may be able to work with it and use it for transformation and growth in your breathwork sessions. Anger can be difficult to separate how I feel compared with feeling of other precipitating anger. Beautiful observation as well. I love these, and I love that you're all interacting and doing them. So we have two portraits, anger and fear, and we're going to hang them on our wall over time so we can look at them. So let's do a somatic technique. And I'd like you to bring one hand in front of you with your thumb up. Your fingers can be spread a little, it's fine. Then you're going to do the same thing with your other hand, and then you're going to hook your thumbs together. So I can press both my hands toward each thumb. So now I have my fingers are like wings of a butterfly, right? Wings of a butterfly. And we're going to bring that to our chest. Take a deep breath in through your mouth and sigh it out through your mouth. And then however you want to breathe with this right now, we're just going to tap twice with one hand, tap twice with the other hand. As we breathe, just tapping the butterfly wings on our chest to calm us. Breathing however feels right for you. Tap one wing for inhale and one wing for exhale. Doesn't matter how many times you tap, 2 or more each side. And as you breathe slowly and tap right and left, it's integrating your right and left hemispheres of your brain, and the tapping is calming your nervous system. Your breath rate should calm, anger should release. Wonderful. If you need to stretch, you might need to make a noise. Stretch, you might shake your hands out if there's any tension in your hands or arms. Just stretching a little bit, different parts of your body, releasing any tension that's there. Wiggling in your chair and feeling your seat. Beautiful. Let's take a deep breath together and sigh it out. Thank you for being present. I hope that this helps you work with fear or anger if they arise in your breathwork session. If you want to do the same technique with other things, you can, for example, if you want to get to know joy, you can clap and jump and wiggle with joy. You can shout with joy. You can drum joy, just like we did these things. Do a portrait and then hang it up and talk about what joy does for you and how it shows up in your life. Any of the emotions you can do this with. And hopefully this will help your breath work and your personal growth. And let's do our one word check out, feeling our seats beneath us and knowing that we're supported. The ground is there beneath our feet, feeling regrounded. Thank you for dancing with these two difficult emotions and getting to know them in your life. Thank you for your presence and for any amount that you participated. Lighter than when we started. Grateful. Grateful. I'm feeling a little exuberant and more open. So I guess my word is open. Strengthened. Thank you as well for participating. Encouraged. Beautiful. Joyful. Wonderful. We'll give it a couple more minutes for checkouts, and I wish you a beautiful time for the rest of your day or evening. Oh, I'm glad you loved it. And oh, that's wonderful that you have a better understanding of your emotions and what they're trying to say rather than pushing them away. That's everything that I'd hoped for in putting together this session so that we could meet and talk about and play with different emotions. Thank you so much, Calmer. Some thank yous. Wonderful. The recording will be available. Usually it's either this Tuesday's announcement, but sometimes it'll be the next Tuesday. If you ever have trouble finding it, you can email admin@breathworkonline.com and we will help. Excited. Thank you very much as well. All right. Thank you for this time together. Play with your emotions, look at your portraits, and continue having this support in your breathwork practice. Thank you for walking with us through this as well. Thanks, Eric. All right. Goodbye.